The sun has set. Jesus and his friends have returned to their homes, trying to understand the dramas of the day. The stilling of the storm was not the last confrontation. On landing in the Gerasenes, they encountered the man for whom Jesus had set out on his dangerous journey. The leader of the opposition had punished those spirits who refused to go on the lake by imprisoning them all in the body of one man. On talking to the bewildered guardian of this man, I discovered that he had first fallen foul of the opposition some years earlier when tampering with spiritual matters which he did not understand. The spirit whose fancy he had unwittingly tickled had leapt aboard and used the man as a plaything ever since, driving him to excesses of violence and rage. As a consequence, the man was thrown out of his village and lived alone by the shore, which was the wrong place to be when the leader of the opposition wanted to punish hundreds of deserting spirits. When we arrived, the man was crammed beyond capacity with every kind of selfish fury. Once the spirits saw the sun walking in their direction, they knew that their judgment had come. Clumsily, they united their attentions and pleaded for a stay of execution. One desperate creature spotted a herd of pigs rooting in the undergrowth on a nearby headland and asked permission to live a little longer in the body of a sow. A moment later, the whole sorry crowd were begging for the same dispensation. Jesus agreed, and they hurtled up to the infertile scrubland, squabbling about who would have which animal. The unwitting pigs were caught up in the fight and were used by their parasitic visitors to barge and shove and bite one another. In a matter of minutes, the whole herd had stampeded over the cliff and drowned, taking their tormentors with them. The man was left, empty, exhausted, and naked, sitting on a rock beside Jesus. The owner of the pigs informed the local residents, and they sent representatives who asked Jesus to leave. Whoever he was clearly bad for the local economy. The 5 Jews climbed back into their boat and rowed home across the now deserted lake. The day's work did not end there. News of Jesus' return spread quickly, and as the disciples eased their boats up onto the beach, they were met by a crowd of familiar faces, all those who considered them to be Jesus' supporters. Before their hero had even had a chance to greet his admirers, Jesus was approached by a man who was certainly not a Jesus supporter. The excitement of the mob cooled rapidly when they saw the chairman of the synagogue committee march swiftly up to Jesus. Jairus was well known to Michael due to the fact that he has been a leading voice in the campaign to get Jesus silenced by the authorities in Jerusalem. He is not in league with the opposition, but is an old-fashioned traditionalist who finds Jesus' style of teaching offensive. The people of Bethsaida and Capernaum knew this very well and looked on anxiously. Jairus knelt on the shingle in front of Jesus, and the people wondered what kind of ploy this might be. Michael tensed beside me. "My little daughter is dying," the man said. "Please come and put your hands on her so that she'll be healed and will live." "It's bound to be a trap," Michael muttered, eager to warn Jesus of the danger. "Look at the man," I urged Michael. "Can't you see the panic in his soul? He's desperate." The local people were outraged. They knew well enough that Jairus' daughter was seriously ill, but how dare the man who had repeatedly criticised Jesus for his actions now come and ask for his help? Hypocrite, was the thought in every mind. Jesus looked into the man's eyes with his piercing gaze he shares with his Father, and said quietly, "Well, let's go." Everyone was surprised to watch Jesus walking side by side with his chief critic, carefully inquiring after the details of his daughter's health. The crowd moved as one with these unlikely partners along the shore road that led to Jairus' impressive villa. As the impromptu procession left Bethsaida, the road narrowed, causing the mass of some 300 bodies to be squashed together. I wish he wouldn't get drawn into these situations, Michael observed. Anyone could stick him with a knife and there'd be nothing that we could do. At that precise moment, Jesus stopped abruptly and asked, "Who touched me?" The obvious answer to the question was half the crowd, and as all those within range of Jesus stood rather embarrassed at his unexpected question, Simon Peter spoke for all of them. "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me," and he stood intently studying the faces that surrounded him. I quickly searched through the mist of humanity around Jesus for someone whose faith made them stand out. It didn't take a moment to locate a middle-aged woman sitting a little apart from the crowd, praising my boss because the flow of blood from which she had suffered for the past 12 years had been instantly healed. I joined her and gently guided her through the crowd to the object of her worship. Through her prayer, she told me that she had thought, "If I can even touch the hem of his coat, I know I will be healed." And she had been right. Jesus greeted her with a warm smile, and while they talked together quietly, I found myself next to the wealthy cynic with a dying daughter, Jairus. His thoughts were ablaze with a conflict to match the ones that he had caused around Jesus. "Come on, you stupid man, or we'll be too late," was his first thought, followed by, "Well, at least he seems to be on good form." The image of his emaciated daughter haunted Jairus' mind, and he longed to grab Jesus by the shoulder and interrupt his patient conversation with the woman. Then a hand grabbed Jairus' shoulder. It was the synagogue secretary, a man of words who on this occasion spoke remarkably few of them. "Your daughter is dead," he announced with the tact of a supernova. "Why bother the teacher any more?" Jairus froze. It seemed as if the blood had simply fallen out of his body, and there, as all his fight and fury deserted him, I saw a deep love for both his family and for my boss. Jesus turned toward him and said, "Don't be afraid. Just trust me." And Jairus did. Jesus spoke to the crowd who'd gathered to meet him. He asked them to allow Jairus some privacy, promising that he would meet them on the Bethsaidan beach the following day. When only his 4 friends and the 2 synagogue officials were left, he suggested that Andrew go home to prepare some supper. Then, with Peter, John, and James, he followed Jairus. As we approached the chairman of the synagogue's grand home, we were met by the defeated spirit of the little girl who was being led away by the opposition spirit to a place of the dead. She was tightly bound by the common petty selfishness that is typical of all human children. Haphrodin, her guardian angel, stopped as soon as he saw the sun, Michael and myself coming in his direction. He was depressed at the loss of his charge, to the emptiness of death and the terror of judgment. "What's going on?" he asked me. I smiled at the terrified spirit of the girl and said to Haphrodin, "Don't let it take her away. Bring her back into the house with us." "There's no point," Haphrodin replied. "Her body's wrecked." "I don't believe there will be a problem in the present company," I assured him, directing his gaze to the sun. He joined our party, wrestling the girl free from her opposition captor, and we crossed a large courtyard. And Jesus spoke, through his prayers, with the spirit of the girl. They talked about the enormous love that Jairus had for his 12-year-old daughter. The house was packed with family and friends, all loudly grieving at the death of the girl. They were surprised to see Jesus entering behind the father of the household. When Jesus insisted that they all leave because the girl was only asleep, not dead, they left the building laughing at him, reassured that Jesus was indeed an idiot, as Jairus had always claimed. Jesus and the girl's spirit waited patiently while the house emptied, each person imparting their condolences to the bereaved parents. When there were only 6 humans, 3 angels, and the spirit of the dead girl remaining, we were led through to a room where the young corpse was laid out. We all stood looking at the human wreckage on the bed, and Jesus whispered to the girl's spirit, "Don't worry, trust me, she'll be as good as new." Jesus then said aloud, "Get up, little girl." Her spirit slid effortlessly into the corpse, and it was as if a lamp had been lit inside. The girl stood up. The mother screamed. The father nearly fainted. Jesus laughed with delight. He brought the astounded parents to their senses by saying, "I think she could do with something to eat." Mother scurried out into the kitchen, followed by her only child, who was skipping. Jesus turned to the father. "Jairus," he said with serious intensity, "you must never tell anyone what has happened here today. Do you understand?" The man nodded, thinking to himself, "They would never believe me if I did." Mother and daughter returned and invited Jesus to join them for dinner. He declined, saying, "Thank you, but tonight Andrew is incinerating some fish for us, a joy that should not be missed." What a day. I'm exhausted, if that's even possible for an archangel.